Earlier, I spent some time watching the Samsung Galaxy Unpacked event, and I gotta be honest, I feel like they spent the majority of the time talking about the S24 Ultra. I honestly don't remember them talking about the S24 or the S24 Plus at all. I know I was in and out of the room a bit doing some stuff around the house, but I had the volume loud enough to be able to hear what was going on even when I wasn't in the room, and I don't feel like I was out of the room long enough to miss a full segment of anything. And I mean, it's clear, which one they want you to buy, the most expensive one. But I figured it'd be a good idea for me to at least look at the other phones. I mean, I know I'm not going to buy the Ultra device. I just have no reason to buy that. The same reason I don't buy the Pro or the Pro Max version of the iPhone, and the same reason I don't buy the Pro version of the Google Pixel. To me, they just aren't warranted. And yeah, I don't need or want to spend the extra money. And I know with the iPhone 15 or 14, well, 15 Pro, it still comes in a smaller size, but with the Pixel 8 Pro or the Galaxy S24 Ultra, those screen sizes are noticeably larger. And yeah, they're beyond what I'd want to keep in my pocket on a daily basis. So let's come here and take a look at all three offerings. Starting with the S24, we'll talk more about the S24 Plus as well as the S24 Ultra. So let's scroll down, and I wish, and I think I always say this when I'm on this website, I wish when you scrolled, it would actually keep the column heading. But we know that the S24 is all the way to the left, the Ultra is all the way to the right, and the Plus is in the middle. And in case we're confused, up here we also have the different names of the phones that are available. So today is January 17th, and they were announced today. And from this chart, and I think they might have mentioned it in the Unpacked event that they're actually available for purchase, or they will actually release sometime next week on the 25th. And that's good. You announce them, allow people to pre-order them if they choose to do so, and then have the phones readily available within a week or so. No sense in announcing a phone and not having it available for months. I mean, that is just annoying. But let's continue down, and we all know that the regular S20 whatever, in this case 24 is the smallest, and the Ultra version is going to be the largest. I'm kind of skipping around here, but the screen size on the regular is 6.2 inches, and that's actually up from 6.1 inches on last year's phone. I think 6.7, I really don't know. 6.7 or 6.8 for the Plus and the Ultra. I don't remember what they were last year. Don't really care because these phones just, you think, like when we got to 6 inches, it was like, okay, hopefully phones stop getting bigger. And then, yeah, when they come out with Pro versions or Max versions or Ultra versions, you're like, all right, these things are getting ridiculous. And large Android phones have always been a thing. And the Plus version of an iPhone had been around for a while, and then you had the Pro Max. The thing with the Plus versions, though, you had the forehead and the chin, so the screen really wasn't that big, but the form factor of the device was relatively large. So 6.2 inches, like I said, up 1 inch from last year's device, and that now falls in line with the Pixel 8, because the Pixel 8 is 6.2 inches, but the Pixel 7 was actually 6.3. So Google decided to shrink theirs by 1/10 of an inch, and Samsung decided to increase their base phone by 1/10 of an inch. And from using the Pixel 8, I will say that I do enjoy the size and the feel of that 6.2 inches in my hand compared to 6.3. 6.1, I do also think was fine for the Galaxy S23 from last year, as well as the iPhone 15, which also comes in at 6.1 inches. But, that 1/10 of an inch, they added it for some reason, and at some point I will get my hands on it, and it'll be nice, I can imagine. Now, just going up one row right there, here's something that I was actually looking forward to, because I heard about the rumors, but I wasn't too sure if it was true. The dynamic LTPO display, which allows the phone to go up to 120 hertz, as it says right there, immediately to the right for all three of the devices, but it can also scaled down. So it's a dynamic refresh rate. And I don't know how low the refresh rate can get. It might get to what, 40 or something. 40 hertz? No, 30 hertz. I'll find out. maybe as low as even 10. So whatever it is welcomed. And I'm trying to remember, what phone did I have before that also dynamic? No, I think it was just a variable refresh rate. So going from 120 down to 90 and then 60. I think 60 was the lowest. I might have saw a 24 at some point for one of the devices I had. I really don't remember. I know the OnePlus device that I recently had scaled down to, I want to say, I don't know. I forget. Not important for a device that we're not really talking about. But for these ones, I'm excited to see exactly how low those refresh rates can go. So good on them for including that on all three models, where I think last year it was only the Ultra device that allowed or had the LTPO display. Going up a little further, typical IP68 ratings. The glass on the phone now is now Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which I see, I'm saying it wrong. So it's Gorilla Glass Victus 2 for the regular and the Plus, but Gorilla Glass Armor for the Ultra. So apparently it's better. More scratch resistant, I believe, is what was said. So cool, I guess. Here's another thing, the SIM card, which I think I've gotten to the point where I talk about it too much, but it needs to be talked about because it can't go away. The iPhone 14 and then now the 15 here in the United States only has eSIM. My Asus Zenfone 9 and Zenfone 10 and the Sony devices that I had only had physical SIMs, so they allowed you to put 2 physical SIMs in there. But after living that life, and then also having devices that have 1 physical SIM and the option for eSIM, I have come to the conclusion that I think that the best option is to have 1 of each. Because you never know. You might just want to take a physical SIM card out of one device and plop it into another one. So all devices involved need to have the physical SIM tray. Or you might be okay with the eSIM only life. Or you might want to start sporadically just a new line of service without having to go talk to anybody or go to a store or do anything. Wait on something to arrive in the mail. And it's nice that it's an option here to have a nano SIM and an eSIM. Or it looks like you can have 2 physical SIMs and an eSIM. And I can imagine that 2 physical SIM and eSIM option is going to be in a device that is not here in the United States. Could be wrong, but I don't see that being the main, us being the main market for that particular one. So nice offerings, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Scrolling down, yes, we have Android 14, which is good. Android 14, yeah, it came out back in October, I believe. But yeah, it's good to know that this phone comes with it out of the box. Samsung Skin is One UI, and the version will be 6.1. So good. The chipset is going to be that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for devices here in the United States and Canada. And again, just like last year, I don't know if it happened the year before, but it's not annotated here, but it's Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy. So there are some changes that have been done to the chipset that's specifically put in the Galaxy compared to that same Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chip that we'll find in other phones, like the OnePlus 12, for instance. It's a device that's out and currently has that chipset. So Samsung and Qualcomm have some agreement that they want their phone to be a little more powerful, and that's what happens. It does look like, though, for the regular and for the Plus, you have, I don't know if it's going to be the default or if it's just an additional option, but for the international version of those devices, it looks like you're going to have the Exynos chip. For the Ultra, it only comes with the Qualcomm chip. So to me, that's kind of an admission of the chip that is ours is an inferior product, which is why we don't put it in our best phone. So yeah, I would not want to use an Exynos chip. I was reading and I kind of knew it, but really wasn't paying attention. But apparently Google's Tensor chips are Samsung chips, and they're based off of the Exynos architecture. So the Tensor chip and the Google Pixel isn't as great as it could be. According to the article that I was reading, starting next year, so in 2025, it looks like Google will be going to TSMC for their semiconductors and their chip design or whatever, and having them actually manufacture their stuff. So the Pixel 10 should be a huge increase in performance compared to what's coming out this year, or what came out last year, and what's going to come out later this year. So we'll see about that. But that, different device. GPU stuff, it is what it is, and how the cores are broken down and stuff. All of these phones perform just fine, so I'm not going to go too in depth into that. As we all know, modern flagship devices don't have SD cards, which, that was one of those things that I complained about for a long time. I even went and ragged on Marquez Brownlee because he was always like, oh, Sony phones are considered enthusiast phones, and one of their enthusiast features is the fact that they have expandable storage. And my whole mindset is, how is that an enthusiast feature? It's just something that all phones used to have, but many of the carriers or many of the OEMs decided to go away with them. I mean, obviously, Apple never had an SD card slot, and they want you to use iCloud. Google has Google Drive, so the Pixel never had an SD card slot. Galaxies did, so Samsung did have them. And I don't know what their clouds, did they have a cloud storage solution? I honestly don't even know. Yeah, no idea. I can imagine that they would, but I'll hopefully put something on the screen to confirm or deny, or to support that claim or reject that claim. But yeah, they don't have SD card slots anymore. Now, I will say, I was bothered by that when it happened and when all these manufacturers started removing them, because it was, all right, the phones that you're having are the ones we were purchasing had 8 gigabytes of storage, maybe 16. Then when we got up to 32, it was a little better. And then for me personally, once phones started hitting 64 gigs, I was fine. And it was a combination of 64 gigs of storage and using a streaming service instead of trying to load a bunch of music on my phone locally. And even when I was using, and I still do, but when I was using Spotify and downloading music, that too would consume a bunch of space. And now, I only download stuff in Spotify if I'm going on a trip and know that I'll be up in a plane or something, and will need access to that content while I'm not connected to the internet. But for now, 64 is fine. I'm happy that 64 is no longer the base. Even the iPhone, now that the base is 128. So here for the regular device, the regular S24, the base storage amount is 128. 8 gigs of RAM for me would be fine. But you can see with the larger devices, depending on, for the larger devices, you can get 12 gigabytes of RAM. And none of that's really too interesting. Yes, you can you can get up to a terabyte of internal storage on the Ultra. Cool. But the one thing that I did before and still find interesting is that they have 2 different storage speed options. So you have UFS 3.1 and 4.0, but 4.0 across the board for the Plus and the Ultra. But if you get the 128 gig version of the regular S24, you are still using UFS 3.1. And I wonder why they do that. I can't imagine there's any technical limitations, but maybe there are that I'm just not aware of. But they did that last year as well in their S23 series, and I just thought that was interesting. And for a person who's not a super gamer, or even though I don't want USB 2.0 on the phone, I don't transfer nearly as much stuff to and from the device as I used to. So UFS 3.0 for me, I'm sure will be fine, and will be fine for most people. Um, because I don't own any UFS 4.0 devices, I might get a little curious and want to experience that UFS 4.0 speed just to see if I notice any differences. I mean, I probably have to get two devices, which I don't want to do that. But the Pixel that I have is 3 point something. I mean, iPhone uses UEFI, NVMe. Um, yeah, non-volatile memory express. Um, so yeah, the only way to compare the two would be probably to have two Galaxy devices or something. But I'll figure that out. But all that, yeah, just I still find it interesting that they still decide to use UFS 3.1 only when you get the lowest storage configuration. So we'll see what happens. And whenever I do start considering making that purchase, that is another variable that I will throw in there. Even though 128 gigs of storage for me internally is more than enough, I kind of want to experience that slightly faster internal storage speed. So we'll see what happens. And just to continue talking about storage speed and things like that, I was talking to a friend about some stuff yesterday, and then talking to my cousin a while ago about stuff, and the conversation I was having with my friend yesterday is we were talking just about USB 2.0 and how, in fact, she was in the process of trying to find or purchase a flash drive for her iPhone 11, and with that, it had a lightning connector, and she didn't send me the link, but she claimed that it had multiple connectors on there. And I've always had the mindset of buying single-use devices are a waste of your money. So buying a flash drive that works with a non-USB-C iPhone, I'm just like, don't do it. If you have stuff that you need to get off your phone, just use a cable, hook it up to your computer. No reason to buy a specific flash drive for that specific phone. Is she going to buy it? Don't know. But what she was talking about in the comments or the reviews of that particular listing on Amazon is people are saying that it transferred data relatively quickly. And not to belabor the point or make this story any longer than it has to be, but for those of you who are listening to this, and for those of you who are over the age of 25, maybe, I don't have children, so I'd have to really think about when did I first experience stuff and how old would somebody be now in the event that they were, whatever. I remember using USB 2.0 devices, peripherals, all the time, as a younger person. And I believe I'm remembering the first laptop I got that had a USB 3 port on it. And this was maybe 10 or so years ago. Actually, no, it was longer than that. Ooh, yeah, it was longer than that. It was, I think, right after grad school. So that was 13 years ago now. And you had to I think I got a flash drive also. That was a USB 3 flash drive. In fact, I think I might be mixing stories here. I don't remember. But whenever it happened, I do remember I was like, man, this is noticeably faster. That was one example of something being faster, getting a USB 3 flash drive. Remember that. Another thing that was faster was going from a purely mechanical hard drive, external, we'll just talk about internal stuff. So internal mechanical hard drives. My first taste of a solid state internal hard drive was a solid state hybrid drive, where I believe, the inner workings are smart enough to put some of the information on the slower part of the drive and some of the information on the faster part of the drive. Was the boot drive on the actual solid state portion of that drive? I don't remember. I don't know. Did it work flawlessly? I don't know. But I could tell you there was a noticeable difference between that hybrid drive and the drive that I was replacing in terms of boot times and load times. Noticeable difference. And then you fast forward to solid state SATA drives. Another noticeable difference in terms of performance. what, SATA 2.0, and I believe 3.0 was like 5 gigabits a second or something. I forget all the specs. But, you see these noticeable improvements in performance, and you're like, wow, this is great. And then NVMe, like I don't remember, I don't know exactly when NVMe first was a thing, but my first experience with it, I was like, man, I bought a desktop that had an NVMe slot, and I went to Best Buy, I bought me a drive, and was so excited to see how fast it was. And it was, yeah, it's night and day differences now. And the whole point of the story is that for people, in fact, before I say even more, my mom had a computer. It was garbage. It wasn't garbage, but that desktop that I purchased and I used for a little bit, I ended up sending it up to her, and yeah, she noticed a huge performance increase. And she had been using her previous desktop for a while. A regular mechanical drive in it. I think some of the USB ports I think they all were like USB 2 ports. I think one of the ports might have been like a USB 1 port. Like it was not a new machine by any matter. I mean, yeah, some of the internal stuff might have been SATA 2 versus SATA. I forget all the specs, but when I did finally look it up, I do remember I was like, wow, I can't believe she's still using this. But as I was about to allude to, the whole point of me mentioning all this, including the iPhone stuff and, my mom's situation, my experiencing different technologies and the performance improvements that came along with those new technologies. You don't know what you're missing until you experience something better. So when I look at UFS 3.1, I haven't experienced UFS 4.0, so I do not know if I'm going to see any noticeable difference, but I won't know until I try it. And I won't know how much potentially a better experience I might get when using a UFS 4.0 device. So long story just to say that you don't know what you're missing until you experience it. iPhone users don't know what USB 3 is. Not that most of them are sending a lot of stuff to and from their devices over a cable, but yeah, they don't know what USB 3 is. My dad, who very smart man, but yeah, I think he's has the mindset of, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And our conversations about installing Windows from a flash drive usually are, he's like, well, I got to find time to do it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is your installation process? And, he tells me what he does and everything. And I come to find out that he's still using USB 2.0 flash drives. And it's like, well, that takes a while. And I there was a time also when he had mechanical hard drive still in his machine. And it's just like, well, yeah, like everything you're using is slow. So it's going to take a while. And once you make that step to solid state, and I'd say NVMe versus a solid state SATA drive, and then, yeah, start using your USB 3 ports on your phone, on your laptop or desktop, if they are present. Of course, get a flash drive or whatever to allow for those improved data transfer speeds. But it's a two-tier process when using that USB flash drive, and it's the creation of it. And if it's sending data to it via a USB 2 interface, that's going to take some time. And then also the process of installing Windows, from the drive that's now sending data back to the computer, and over that slower interface is going to degrade the experience. So he has since, I believe, upgraded to some USB 3 stuff. And yeah, that was a very long story, but I don't think I'm going to edit any of that out, just because, yeah, it's fascinating that you don't know what you're missing until you experience something new. Anything else? Could I talk about speeds and stuff? Yeah, I mean, a couple weeks ago, yeah, my cousin was trying to transfer some information to a flash drive. And I mean, I think the flash drive itself was only like 4 gigs. So, it was 3 gigs of data. And so nothing too large. But it took a long time to transfer it. And I was just like, my gosh, this is like, we were on the phone. And I was like, man, this is taking forever. And of course, in my head, I'm like, well, I know I have Thunderbolt ports on these laptops. I don't have any Thunderbolt peripherals, but I have USB 3.2 stuff. So 10 gigabit transfer speeds. And the amount of time it took for him to transfer those 3 gigs, I'm confident that I probably would have been able to transfer 40 or 50 gigs, if not more in that same time. So, but for him, he was fine because that's what he's used to. And he's not going to buy anything new, and I'm not going to force him to do so. But let's continue. Man, that was probably half the video right there. But loudspeakers, of course, stereo speakers, cool. Audio stuff. I'm always like, what is going on with Samsung, and why don't they support the Qualcomm Bluetooth codecs? So aptX, whatever. So HD, or I guess just aptX in general. And then you have the HD, and then you have the low latency. And I think there's another one that just recently came out, like variable something or adaptive. And yeah, their phones don't support it. At least they didn't. I don't know if they do now. And I mean, I feel like I noticed a difference when I connected the same headphones to a Galaxy and then to another device. Heck, even connecting the Galaxy or something else to my car radio. I feel like I heard a difference. And I was like, the fidelity isn't there. And it's just leading to a degraded experience. And it's really unfortunate that if they still don't, it's unfortunate they still don't. I can say it's unfortunate that they didn't. Of course, no headphone jack, no new news there. We see that the Ultra supports Wi-Fi 7, and I always laugh when some of these devices are on the bleeding edge of technology. And it's just like, well, I don't expect to use a Wi-Fi 7 router anytime soon. Even a 6E router, I'm just like, I know I've used Wi-Fi 6 stuff. I don't own any, but I've been in some public places, and with the Zenfone at least, I don't know if other phones will just flat out show you in the actual Wi-Fi network availability list which networks support Wi-Fi 6. So that's nice. But yeah, 6E, I don't think I've used one of those. And yeah, like I said, Wi-Fi 7, don't plan on using one of those anytime soon. Typical stuff, yes, NFC, no infrared port, no radio. And as I was talking about earlier, yeah, USB transfer speeds. Here we have USB 3.2. And yeah, that should be 10 gig transfer speeds would be my guess. But I do know that they also changed the naming convention because USB 3 became 3.1. And I think it might have become 3.2, and then there was USB 3.2 Gen 2, but then I think USB 3.2 Gen 2 by 2 or something. So the naming convention got extremely confusing. So just like with the Wi-Fi numbers, because you see, and this is where it's kind of jacked up. It's like A, B, G, N, A, C, 6. Whoa, what, wait? Why do we go from letters to numbers? Like, I get why they did that, but I feel like they need to just go back in time and then, put those letters into numbers then. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I mean, you can just count and it's, you get to where you need to get. But with USB, I feel like that's what needs to happen as well. Because 3.2 at this point, it used to mean something. I want it to mean 10 gig, but I don't know if that's actually true anymore. But if it just flat out said 10 gig, then we'd be good to go. And I think on Apple's website for their devices, I think they do just say USB 10 gig or up to 5 gigabits or whatever it is. So cool. Here is one feature about the Galaxy devices that I've thoroughly enjoyed for the past 2 years. The under-display fingerprint reader I thought was going to be gimmicky, but when you implement it the way that Samsung did, using an ultrasonic one compared to an optical one, the ultrasonic one just works so much better. The Pixels have the optical ones, and I'm just like, they're not terrible, but they aren't as good. And it's just like, you don't know what you're missing until you find something better. So if you only have a Pixel and you're like, oh yeah, this isn't bad. I mean, one, if you've only been using pixels, I'd still say, well, the rear mounted fingerprint reader was still better. I mean, no reason to change something. Like it wasn't broken, so just leave it. And then even with the Pixel 4, their facial ID biometric stuff was pretty good. So I feel like those were better options than their under display one. But if I needed to have, or if I had to have an under display one, I would definitely prefer this ultrasonic one that is in the Galaxy. Um, Here, looking at additional features, Samsung DeX. Don't know if you've ever used Samsung DeX. I've tried it once and I thought it was okay. I will say the reason I was using DeX is when I first started recording my YouTube videos, I wanted a reference monitor. And what I could do is sit there with the phone either connected directly to the computer or directly to the monitor. And yeah, you are now running an operating system. You can open the camera app and you can see what's going on in the camera. And I could, put the phone in front of me and start recording. And yes, I know I could use the front-facing camera and do that, but I wanted to use the best cameras on the phone. So yeah, I started using DeX in order to connect it to the computer to have a reference monitor. Now here at the bottom portion of that row, it talks about ultra wideband support. For DeX, is that what it's saying? Like, is that? Yeah, I mean, it's in the DeX field. It's in the DeX cell, so I can imagine that yes, all devices here allow you to connect the phone to a screen via a cable. Then using wireless DeX, I don't know exactly how that works. I'd have to, just go into. I'm sure if you go into the settings, it'll tell you what to do. I feel like there needs to be something on the receiving end to. Well, I don't feel. I know there has to be something on the receiving end to for the phone to send the video signal to. And I'm just curious as to what exactly is that going to be. I mean, maybe if you're using a computer, you can go to a website or not a website, but an address in your web browser, maybe, and it'll send stuff to the web browser, and then you're able to interact with it that way. But if you just want to connect directly to a monitor, I don't know, and I would hate, I should say, for somebody to have to buy an additional piece of hardware to connect to a monitor that the phone can then see and then send information to wirelessly. But with the ultra wideband support, I can imagine that the signal between your phone and whatever device you're connected to, however it's connected, as long as that device also supports some type of ultra wideband, the signal should be really, really strong as long as you're, close enough to it or whatever. So, but we'll see. I'm sure somebody will make some videos about it if they don't already exist for some of the older devices. Here, and I think we're down at the bottom, I complained about it in an earlier video that I made, and I've complained about it in the past, that Samsung really skimps on the battery for their smaller phone. So 4,000 milliamp hours is fine. But even my Zenfone 9, which has a 5.9 inch screen, has 4,300 milliamp hours. And I'm just like, why are you punishing us, Samsung? And it's like, okay, you have 4,000 in the small guy and 4,900 in the plus. And I'm sure they purposely did not just make that 5,000 because they needed another thing to differentiate the plus from the ultra. And that's just, one more thing. No, the battery's bigger. So, not looking at those two devices, but 900 milliamp hour difference between the plus and the regular. That's almost a 25% increase. That's nothing to that's not anything to thumb your nose at. That's a pretty sizable difference for, the size difference in the actual phone. So that's a little unfortunate. I feel like Samsung could have squeezed a bigger battery in that smaller device. In fact, I know they could. There's no question about it. Like I said, my Zen phone is smaller and has a higher capacity battery. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, charging 25 watts, power delivery 3.0, 50% in 30 minutes. And then, yeah, here's another thing to limit or differentiate the Plus from the regular. 45 watt wired power delivery 3.0, 65% in 30 minutes. So, and 15 watt wireless, 4.5 watt reverse wireless. Cool. And yeah, you have your different colors, model names, and so forth and so forth. So yeah, I was actually excited to see this. I don't think I mentioned pricing at the beginning of this. $800 for the base, $1,000 for the base plus, and $1,300 for the base ultra. And you can see what those starting configs are: 128.8, 256.12, 256.12. But yeah, like I said, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to actually getting my hands on one of these in a couple months. Playing around with it just to be underwhelmed. Not saying that the phones are bad. It's just I'm just like, oh yeah, it's good. It's good, but it's not what I want to use on a daily basis. So we'll see. And when I do get my hands on that, I'll be sure to make some content.